Okie dokie, we'll kick straight on in today too, with a look at book building for the Ballymore.
Yeah, and I think this is quite a hard race each year to get carried away with early. It's hard in the Supreme. You tend to have a pretty good idea, I think, of the types that Mullins and Henderson aim at the Supreme. You're not always going to be right, and clearly some will go up in trip. We saw that last year with Sir Gerard. But I think the difficulty, I think, with the Ballymore is that you can have the Facile Vegas this world that step up in trip. If we're talking about this season, but you also have those horses coming out of France and out of the point-to-point fields. The French horses tend to be sharper types that stick over 2 miles, but the point-to-pointers can end up either way, really. There's a nice group of pointers this season to look at as well. The ones that stand out specifically for me are ante, Barry the Butcher, and Arctic Brazil would be the ones that I'd probably be looking from the point-to-point field for this race specifically. But again, you have to bear in mind horses are going to get split up. There's crossovers in terms of stables, ownership, etc. So it's so hard to predict. And you've got some horses from last year, some of the hurdlers from last year. We've already mentioned Facile Vega. I think Facile Vega probably will stay at 2 miles. Which, if that happens, American Mike will probably come here. I'm inclined to write off Punchestown actually just as being a race too many for him, and judging on his previous efforts. I think you've got Willie's got horses like James's Gate. They said straight after last season's festival that Gaelic Warrior was going to be targeted at this race. There's another horse that I quite like in the UK. Again, just mindful of the fact that all we're talking about is Irish horses, although Irish horses are tending to dominate. Look Away won at Aintree. Horse with Neil King. I actually think that is a really, really smart horse. I think it's potentially the very best horse that Neil King's had. I think he could be smart, and I think it'll be this race that he comes to. And I think he will be in the mix, actually. People will overlook him. There's a few more that are floating around, names that have come to the fore more recently. And I'm going to mention Grey Dawning. That's a horse I think may just get a quieter campaign. I wouldn't be advocating him as an anti-post. I think he's going to get a quiet campaign and be looked after. 3 others that I would mention are Path de Roux, that's D''OROUX, Imagine, and a horse called Marine Nationale with Barry Connell. So they're the horses that I've got on my long list. I haven't gone overboard. I have a couple of stakes in the ground with the race with James's Gate, Gaelic Warrior, Antobar, Barry the Butcher, and American Mike. They're the ones that I've actually got in my book. But there are others that I'm actually actively looking at, and I'll keep an eye on as the season develops.
Okay, brilliant. I've got no ones to add to that, to be fair. I think that definitely James's Gate, like you 100% the target, which is a massive thing for a Willie Mullins horse.
Yes.
He was only as big as 20 to 1, you can still get 14, and he'll just almost certainly be going there, even if he runs bigger.
The ownership dictates he'll go there.
Yeah. Even, I think, what was the one last year, and he ended up a bigger price at one point, and I backed him. But
yes. Yeah. Can't remember, but yes, he did.
Okay, the Brown Novice, always going to be the RSA.
Yes, agreed.
John got 14-1. Hillcrest 16.
He's not going there, is he? I think you can take quite a lot of names out the betting for that race. There's a small number that I'd perhaps focus on for the race. I think you've got to have the 2 Willie horses, the Nice Guy and Manila Kakuna. I think they're both likely to end up in this race, actually. I think they are going to follow a similar path and follow each other. I know people have said Manila Kakuna may be one that improves. But bear in mind how lightly raced the Nice Guy was last season. I actually think he's probably going to improve further. But, I think, again, they're both horses you want in your book. Journey with Me, I think you've probably got to have in your book. He's definitely one that you would be putting into your book. There are a few that I think you need to consider, but perhaps not back at this stage. Three Stripe Life, I think, is possibly more likely to end up as a Turner's horse, but he could end up over 3 miles. You know, he would see the trip out, I think, on breeding. But he's the kind of breeding that tends to and he'll want more of a trip with age. I think he may well stick at 2.5 this year. And he'd only go up to 3 miles if they felt as though they really had to. There are horses like Blazing Carl, I suppose, coming back from injury. I think he's more likely to have a stayers campaign. I don't know whether anything's been said yet, actually. He'd be interesting if he was going over fences, but, you know, he's not a backable proposition. I mentioned Hollow Games in the previous video. I think he will have a brand advisory campaign. And I'd possibly just have him in my book with half a mind that he could go further if he was beaten a couple of times by Mullins horses. But nothing else really I'd have on my mind other than those for the race, I think. Mass has got Gentleman's Game. I don't think he's going chasing, or don't know, but I might consider him if he was going chasing.
Yeah.
Can't think of anything else really. There's nothing else really that springs to mind. But
is Time Hill going chasing?
Time Hill's going chasing, but I'm not particularly. Look, I'll probably end up having to back him from my book, but I'm not really keen on horses that have hung around over hurdles for novice chasers.
No,
never have been, you know, and that tends to have served me well over the years.
Yeah, and Hillcrest.
Time Hill it's probably one of those horses that he's worth putting in your book because there won't be a massive amount of credible opposition in the UK. He'll go and win a couple of novice chases probably quite nicely. He'll sure have him in your book for that reason. And you know, he's in a mission for my book at the moment, so it's probably good that we had this conversation. I probably will end up backing him.
Yeah, he's the one I'd wait for because he's the one that he'll get an entry and he won't get cut because he's not high profile enough. So just wait for him to be a declaration.
There's no race. I agree with that. I will back him though.
What do you think? Is what about Hillcrest? Because he was massive.
Yeah, jury's out for me. I want to see him back out. He's massive. He's built like a chaser. But there's just this feeling now for me that either he wants soft ground or he's may flatter to deceive. I just want to see him out on slightly better ground in something that's half decent.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Anything else on that race?
No, not really. I think that's it. There's nothing else that springs to mind. Certainly, there's nothing else that I backed from other than some of the ones I mentioned. Unibet
have got a Coral Cup market already. That's incredible.
Right,
we're not spending any time on that. Okay. Champion Chase. Okay. 16-1 Edwardstone. Oof.
Yeah, that's fair enough as an each way bet. I think Edwardstone and Gentleman to me are probably the two that you'd want on side as cover for an Ergemine and Shiskin, assuming Shiskin's back and fitting well.
Yeah, they'd be. Would that be similar to the Champion Herd or just Dutch? The two. It's
always worth considering with that race is I don't know what it is, but it often cuts up. I think the thing with two mile chases, they're probably more prone to injury because of the way they fly at fences and you know the speed they're going. And often the Champion Chase cuts up. So I wouldn't put anybody off that looks at horses at bigger prices for that race. And Ergemine has been known to be fragile in the past. Don't forget. Shishkin, you know, clearly has had a problem last season. You know, and I really wish for a fit and well Shishkin to be there and a fit and well Ergemine to be there because it'd be one of, if not the race at the festival. But it's equally likely that neither of them are there. And then you're looking at Gentleman Demi and Edwardstone, and then you're back into some of the old favourites like, say, Nuba Negra, for example.
Yeah, so I wouldn't 33 Nuba Negra and Shaka Oswa, 33.
Shakin, I'm not sure will come over this time. I think he's had his chance. Nuba Negra didn't run because of the ground. He was second the year before. What price does he get? Because I actually haven't put him in my book yet, but I am contemplating putting him in.
Who was that, mate? Sorry, I got distracted.
Nuba Negra.
33.
Yeah. So, you know, again, he's not one that you need to put in your book today. But he may be one of those that he'll end up turned up in the Schlur chase at Cheltenham, and you want him in before that, for example.
Yeah, look at entries for the Schlur and the Tingle Creek and stuff. There's the only short one we've not mentioned. It's Fernie Hollow,
and I'd like to see him with a doctor's pass because he's had so many sick notes now. You'd be really worried about backing him anti-post for anything.
Yeah, I didn't like him at 8-1 for the Arkle, let alone the Champion Chase. So no chance for them.
And number one, you'd worry about him retaining all of his ability now, and more often than not, with these kind of injuries, they reoccur and they're a real handful to try and get back to the racecourse.
Yeah. I think I do like the look of. I will attack this race, I think, and just wait for entries for the big horses, but take some of those bigger prices because you're absolutely right with the sort of 2 mile chasers would be more likely than anything else to be injured, I suppose. I've made that up, but my guess would be.
Let's put it this way: for me, the way to play that race is clearly, I'd like to see that the race end up being a match between an Erjemine and Shishkin, and both in turn fitting well. And I'll assume they will. But I will cover my stakes with 3 or 4 others, because if both of those disappear, I'm now sitting on big prices for a winner and 2 places.
Yeah. I think, do you know, this is the races where I didn't treat it like a business and trying to just make money. This would be the one. It's my favourite race. And I just hope they have a proper clash. Yeah,
mine too, actually. I love to see 2 mile chasers absolutely winging the fences. It's just the biggest spectacle of all. For most people, it's the Gold Cup. I get and understand why that's the case. Some people might be the Champion Hurdle. For me, it's absolutely the Champion Chase, and some of my heroes have been the Champion Chase horses. My ultimate horse is Cato Star, if I'm honest, and who never ran in a Champion Chase, but was probably good enough to, could have won at any distance really. But all of those horses behind him are Champion Chasers.
Yeah, and what about speaking of Cato Star, then Galloping Deschamps, because they've been likened. I see he's in here. You can get anything from 8 to 20 to 1. I would love to see him in this race.
But I don't think it's ever going to happen, and I can't back him because I don't believe it will.
It'd be great, though.
Yeah, look, there's an outside possibility he'd run in the turns, I suppose, but as long as they've got faith in him, there's no reason why he's not going to go and take on the Gold Cup, I think. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we'll talk about him when we get to the Gold Cup. But I see him potentially as being a Cato Star type, and the last horse that made the hair stand up on the back and went out like he does was Cato Star.
Yeah, he's exciting. He is exciting. He's the kind of horse that I don't know, just wherever he runs, he'll just be. You just glued to the TV, aren't you? Or just worth going to watch as well.
Got a huge engine and just flies his fences.
I've not seen him live. Wherever, which day? No, I can't have done. Wasn't there. So yeah, he's one I definitely need to go and see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, so that's a fairly straightforward race, isn't it? Where are we up to? The Grand Annual's priced up there. Cross country. Bleh.
Well, cross country actually theoretically isn't a hard one to figure out, is it? There's always that risk that something comes along that we don't know about. But Delta Work was good enough, really, to not be too concerned about what does come along. I have to say, I thought it was massively impressive. I've rolled him 5 times over the summer. That's how impressive I thought he was. He's probably my biggest. No, I'm not going to say he's probably my biggest winner. He is my biggest winner at the moment in my books. Prengard could be what they said he was going to be if he's acclimatised. So
he's bad in it.
Yeah,
you can get a spelt incorrectly 14 to 1, which I'd probably chance.
Yeah, absolutely. They'd honour that. I think they'd have to honour it. The 2 that I'd probably put in there for a book, the places are Plan of Attack and Shady Operator. And I can't think of anything else I'd even consider putting in there. Maybe something like Santini might go that route this year, I suppose. But I think 3 miles is probably not right.
Previous winner at 20s, easy. That got to be in the book. Got to be.
Yeah, he's not going to run though, is he?
No. No. Okay, that's a fairly straightforward one. There'll be, I'm sure, at some point, Scooby will let me know that there's some magical new one coming over from France that never actually runs. So I'll end up adding that at some point. Back on the lash, Sam Crow. Has he gone pointing? Did I read?
The rumour is that Sam Crow is going that route. So we'll see.
Hunting, sorry, not pointing. Yeah. Okay. Easy one.
You wouldn't be backing him, would you?
I would, yeah. Just
Would
because I would, just because it's the kind like I'd have to have something on. I'd just have to.
The only way you do that is if he was brought over and given the typical cross country campaign, but given Delta Work is in the same ownership, just I'm not sure it makes any sense. They'd only be doing it as a backup.
It didn't make sense to run Delta Work this year, though, did it?
No, it didn't. But they'd be doing it as a backup, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Whereas Delta Work wasn't a backup. Delta Work was far too good to be a backup.
No, I've loaded up the champion bumper, but there is literally no way I'd be making a book in the champion. Oh, hang on. It has been easy the last couple of years.
I'll give you 3 horses I think you want in your book.
Go on then. They're big enough prices. At least we're not. At least we're 16 to on the field here.
Yeah, exactly that. Look, history tells you want the best of Woolies and the best of Gordons. So that's you wouldn't look at anything else, really, would you? So the horses that I would focus on, first one I'll give you is Better Days Ahead. I was an underbidder on that, ironically, with a group of other people. But I think he went for 360,000 in the end to Gordon Elliott. So he's a Gordon Elliott's, and I suspect he's probably their best bumper horse. He's a future Gold Cup horse, I'm telling you now. I am telling you now because I'd like that to be the case, because I'd like to think that I picked a future Gold Cup horse that I didn't. Well, not that I didn't buy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The other one's possible. I'm not suggesting you back this actually, but I'm just going to throw this name out there as one to watch out for as an alternative from Gordon Elliott Stables, and that's Croke Park. The horses that I like from Willie Mullins are Chapeau de Soleil, but it appears that the cat's out of the bag with that now. He's been back quite heavily. So, what price is he now?
No, you still get 16 into 10.
I got him at 28 because I got a boost and 20, so he's not that much shorter. So I suppose he's still backable. One that's probably not really been talked about that I think is interesting is Nick Rocket. Rocket is ROCKETT.
Yeah, 20 to 1.
So they're the 4 that I'd throw out there. It's obviously possible that there's something unnamed in the Willie Mullins stable, because nobody even knew the name Facile Vega this time last year.
No.
And there is a rumour there is another one there at the moment. That might be named now. Can't remember, but the chance of Lightning striking twice in that way is pretty small, I would suggest. I think whatever that horse is, if you can get on early at, say, 25 to 33s, you perhaps do it. But I reckon as soon as the cat's out of the bag, just because it'll end up being 5 to 1 or something ridiculous. And you just wouldn't bother. You'd want to wait until it was on a race course and it was an aeroplane, and then try and roll it up, I think. But that'd be the ones I'd throw out for the bumper.
Fair enough. Just there's a couple of names that have cut, like Barry the Butcher came up before, but I suppose do we not know whether he's going novice chasing?
I think he's like to go novice chasing rather than stick around in bumpers.
Is that the same with Demand Driving Duvan?
Yeah, and actually, Demand Driving Duvan is one I didn't mention for the novice hurdles that is interesting, but I just want to see what's happening with him. In retrospect, he was beaten in his bumper, but in retrospect, he was beaten by a very good horse. And if he wasn't quite ready or not quite sharp enough, or 2 miles is too sharp for him, Demand Driving Duvan could be one of those horses that's a little bit overlooked and a little less trendy now, should we say. He almost fits, what's the name of the horse that you liked for the Ballymore last year? Ginto. He almost fits the Ginto bill, shall we say, where people might not quite warm to him, but he could end up being pretty useful.
Yeah. And I fancied him for the Albert Bartlett. You just reminded me that was the worst.
So I think you might be saying the words, instead of Ginto on podcast this year, I think you might end up saying the words demand, drive and do that. And getting it wrong about 10 times.
Mike Drogo!
Hasn't got the same ring to it in a high-pitched voice, has it?
Right. That's a nice note to end on for day 2.